All right, today we're going to talk about a parasite that's a bit of a rule breaker. It's not what you probably think. It's not a worm, not a virus. It's actually a giant, well, in the microscopic world anyway, and it can live inside us. We're talking about Balantidium coli.
So when you picture a single-celled organism, your mind probably jumps to something, tiny and insignificant, right? But what if I told you that the biggest one that can infect us, humans, is so massive you could almost see it with the naked eye?
And boom, there it is. Meet Balantidium coli. It's what's called a ciliated protozoan. And really all that means is it's covered in all these tiny little hairs that it uses to swim around. And its size, we're talking up to 200 micrometers. For a single cell, that is absolutely massive. It's a literal giant in its world.
Okay, so we've met this single-cell giant. But where does it actually fit into the grand scheme of things? Understanding its classification is really the first step to figuring out how it operates and how it can make us sick.
This is a really important distinction to make. Balantidium coli is a protozoan. Think of it as a complex one-cell show kind of organism. It's definitely not a metazoan. That's the category for multicellular animals, like all those parasitic worms you hear about. And believe me, knowing that difference is absolutely crucial when it comes to diagnosis and treatment.
All right, let's zoom in a little. First off, it's an endoparasite. Endo just means inside. It sets up shop inside its host, specifically in the large intestine. And here's a wild fact. Of all the ciliate organisms out there, and there are a lot, this is the only one we know of that infects humans. That makes it pretty unique. Oh, and a little heads up for all you science buffs. Its name is kind of changing. In the latest scientific literature, you'll start seeing it called Balantidium coli. Same bug, just a little taxonomic glow-up.
Okay, so we've got a handle on what it is. The next big question is, where does it come from? And it turns out the story of Balantidium coli is completely tied up with one of the most common farm animals on the planet.
And that animal is the pig. That's the key right there. Pigs are the main reservoir for this parasite. What that means in the real world is that human infections almost always happen in places where people and pigs live in close quarters, especially if sanitation and hygiene aren't so great. So that brings up an interesting question, right? What happens in a place like the Netherlands, which has a huge pig industry, but also top-notch public health? Well, it's a fantastic case study. Local cases of the infection? Basically zero. The only ones they ever see are from people who have traveled to other parts of the world. It's a perfect example of how good hygiene and just keeping animal operations separate from human food and water can completely break the chain of transmission.
All right, let's switch perspectives now and follow the life story of the parasite itself. It's got a surprisingly direct life cycle, but it has this really clever trick. It relies on two totally different forms to survive both inside and outside a host.
Okay, this diagram from the CDC lays it all out perfectly. Check this out. It all starts when a host, like one of us, accidentally swallows the cyst form. That's its tough little survival pod. Usually it's in contaminated water or food. Once it's inside, it hatches in the small intestine and the active form travels down to the large intestine. That's where it settles in and starts to multiply. The whole cycle completes when new cysts get passed in the feces, ready to infect someone else. So let's really nail this down, because it's the most important part of its story. It's got two forms. Form 1 is the cyst. Just picture a tiny armored capsule. It's built to survive out in the harsh environment. This is the infectious stage. Then, once it gets safely inside a host, it transforms into the trophozoid. That's Form 2. This is the active, mobile, feeding, and multiplying stage that actually causes all the problems inside the gut.
So what happens when a person actually gets infected? Well, this is where it gets tricky because the outcome can vary dramatically, from having no idea you're even carrying it to a life-threatening illness.
The disease it causes, called balantidiasis, generally shows up in one of three ways. Most commonly, it's asymptomatic. The person is a carrier, shedding cysts, but feels totally fine. Then there's the chronic form, with nagging on and off symptoms like diarrhea and cramps. But in some cases, it can become acute or fulminant, and this one is serious. We're talking severe bloody diarrhea, high fever, and a really rapid decline in health.
So what's the deciding factor? What makes one person a symptom-free carrier and another critically ill? It really all comes down to the host's immune system. If someone is malnourished, suffers from alcoholism, or has a compromised immune system because of something like HIV or cancer, they are at a much, much higher risk of developing that severe, dangerous form of the disease.
Okay, so with symptoms that range from 0 to, well, 100, you can see why getting an accurate diagnosis is so critical. But actually finding this invader, yeah, that comes with its own set of challenges.
The go-to method is still good old-fashioned microscopy. A lab tech takes a stool sample and literally looks for the parasite. The big problem, though, is that the parasite isn't shed consistently, so you might need to test multiple samples just to find it. Now, there's a more modern approach, PCR, which looks for the parasite's DNA and is much more sensitive. But, and this is a big but, unlike a lot of other infections, there are no common rapid tests, which can really delay getting a diagnosis.
So how do we fight back? Well, the good news is we definitely have the tools. This infection is treatable, prevention is pretty straightforward, and new research is constantly improving our understanding of this giant protozoan. When it comes to treatment, there's pretty broad agreement internationally. For adults, the first choice drug, both in places like the Netherlands and around the world, is the antibiotic tetracycline. For children, though, the preferred option is metronidazole. That's because tetracycline can affect bone and tooth development in kids under 8, so it's avoided.
And what about prevention? Well, it's all about breaking that transmission route. It really boils down to 3 simple, powerful actions. Number 1, rigorous hand washing, especially after any contact with pigs. Number 2, ensuring your water is safe by boiling or filtering it, especially in high-risk areas. And number 3, practicing good food safety by thoroughly washing all your produce. So, what does the future hold? Well, some really cool research is happening. Scientists are looking into how a healthy gut microbiome might actually protect us from infection. They're also working on developing those faster, field-ready PCR tests for a quicker diagnosis. And, fascinatingly, they're getting much better at cultivating Balantidium coli in the lab, which is absolutely essential for studying it and developing new drugs.
Just so you know, this explainer was compiled using a Gemini deep search. And if you'd like to dive deeper into the science yourself, a full list of our sources is available for you in the linked Notebook LM document.
So, what complex topics should we break down for you next? Let us know in the comments below. And hey, if you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing for more. It really helps us out. And I'll leave you with one final thought. The story of Balantidium coli isn't just about a parasite. It's a story about the deep connection between animal health, human health, and the environment. As our world keeps getting smaller and more connected, what do you think is the single most important factor in preventing diseases that jump from animals to humans? Something to think about. Thanks for watching.